Everyone, welcome to the January 12th meeting of the Rutherford County School Board. Our first order of business, our Pledge of Allegiance, be led by Board Member Terry Hodge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. We will take a moment of silence, and during our moment of silence tonight, I ask that you join the board in remembering the family of Barbara Jernigan, who passed away January 3rd. Mrs. Jernigan is the mother of Joanne Robichaud, who works in the central office, and the wife of Commissioner Joe Frank Jernigan. Also, please remember the family of Vicki Adams, who passed away January 9. Ms. Adams worked at Eagleville High School. And also the family and loved ones of former Superintendent Jerry Gaither. If you would join the board in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. If you would look at the agenda board, please. The agenda need approval.
So moved.
Mr. Blair, thank you. I need a second for that, please. Well, things are certainly moving right along here. Okay, I heard two people. I believe there's more than one that round. Any comment?
Yes, Mr. Jordan, I'd like to see about adding back what we took off last night, 9B, C, and D on the land, geotech testing and soil testing.
I will second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on adding back in? It was B, C, and D, I believe, last night. I think that's what Mr. Hodge just read. Comment or discussion from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to express that I would like to see that addressed sooner than later as well myself.
Any other comments? Okay, then we have a motion that's been made properly and seconded properly, and we need to vote. All in favor of adding that back in to the? I assume we will cover this at what point? Will we cover this right now? Immediately, if it's added back in?
I think the motion was for 9B, C, and D, so I would assume it position number 9.
Just go back where it was before. Okay, all in favor of that, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? And I am definitely opposed. Anything else? Okay, need an approval, I believe, for the rest of the agenda. Okay, you think you can get that back up there when the appropriate time comes? Okay, approval of the consent agenda is needed. I need a motion for that, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. A second.
Second.
I believe that was Mr. Estes. Any comment? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay. Help me out, Mr. Odom. I believe we go right to visitors at this point. We have recognition. Mr. White, is the young man with us? Okay, who's here? I'm sorry. Okay, Coach, if you would come forward, please. Coach Cowan is from, and I'm sorry your name was not on here, and I apologize for Coach, to recognize and honor the back of the year, Jacoby Stevens of Oakland High School. I was told this morning that he's already enrolled at LSU.
Yes, sir.
We get them ready early, don't we, around here?
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, I know there's a lot of nice things you can say about Jacoby, so take it away, Coach.
Okay, I appreciate it. First of all, let me thank the board for inviting us over for this award. As you all know, football and sports in general is pretty important in this county, and the brand of football we play in this county and in this region, a lot of people call it the SEC of high school football. It's very tough, and I'm sure all of you have seen Jacoby play at some time, and he's a great young man, and I'm very proud of him. The first time he showed up, he was 15 years old, but he looked 18, and he was a good-looking young man, and but he was still immature. But one thing through the years that we had him that we're probably most proud of is he really matured. His growth was great in all aspects. All the ladies in the front office, they loved him to death. They miss him to this day. Even though he's gone, they will miss him. I know Miss Hodge and some of the ladies back in the back, they would ooh and all over him all the time. But that was just his personality, because he really was a good person. Football-wise, he's won a lot of awards for us. He's won Mr. Football. His trophy for the Gatorade Player of the Year, for the best player in the state of Tennessee, came in this week. He was our region MVP this year. He was our region co-MVP last year. And as we already said, he knew that football is his avenue to be successful for a long time. He has taken all the correct classes in order to graduate early in December. So he is an early enrollee at LSU. As far as I know right now, his whole family's down there, and he is enrolled, and he is about to start classes. Again, we're very proud of him, and thank you so much for this acknowledgement of his success. And on behalf of Oakland High School, we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand from talking to one of his teammates who will remain nameless, said that Jacoby was a great teammate. I thought that was a real compliment.
He was very, again, he knew how good he was. He knew his talent. He knew his talent. He was a very blessed young man just to be, it was natural. But then he would also help those that weren't quite as talented as he was. And he would encourage them, and again, we're very proud of him. We came up a little bit short there at the end this year, but, we had a really, really, really good year. And, of course, he was a huge part of that.
Will you be sure and tell him that the Rutherford County School Board appreciates his efforts for Oakland High School. They had a tremendous year.
Thank you very much.
Of course, he was a tremendous player for them, and evidently a tremendous person.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Pass that along to him, please.
Great, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coach White, well, if we get it, we can go ahead and do number 9 here. We got one thing, and then if we go to A or B, C, and D, it's going to take a while. Okay? Okay. Then let's go to number 9.
A, okay.
Facilities, please.
Number 9A, under Facilities, Roy Waldron School Addition and Renovation Deductive Change Order. Barron Construction, LLC, has submitted a deductive change order in the amount of $56,541.48 in savings on the construction of the Roy Waldron School Addition and Renovation Project. This would change the contract amount for the construction of Roy Waldron School Addition from $4,061,200 to $4,004,658.52. Recommend approval of the motion to approve the deductive change order submitted by Barron Construction, LLC of $56,541.48 in savings during the construction of Roy Waldron School Addition and Renovation Project. This will decrease the final contract amount from $4,061,200 to $4,004,658.52.
Okay, this is a good thing. We're getting money back. I can't imagine anybody voting against this, but are there any questions?
Move for adoption of the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. A second. Ms. Moore, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, and nobody's going to oppose getting money back, of course. And Mr. Greg White, you're up, sir. And welcome to the Rutherford County School Board. And Jacob Smith, you come on up with him and carry that piece of hardware with you there.
First off, thank you guys for having us. Coach Cowan sitting back there. Coach Cowan and I go a long way back in this county coaching football, and I'm really happy to see, how well Oakland did getting to the state championship this year and coming a little bit short, but representing our county the way that they did. Coach Cowan, congratulations to you guys. Jacob Smith was kicker of the year in the state. Out of all the kickers in the state, it's a little bit different award than everybody else because they take all the classifications and they put them in just as kickers. So there's only 4 kickers that are chosen as finalists, and Jacob won as kicker in the state, best kicker in the state. He's got a couple of college scholarships offers that he's looking at. We're waiting on signing day right now to find out where he's going to end up. We're really proud of him. A quick story about Jacob is he's a pretty good sized kicker. He's about 6'2" and pushing 200, right at 205 pounds. And when he first walked in as a freshman, and I looked at him and said, "Man, we need defensive ends. That's great." And he goes, "No, Coach, I'm just a kicker." And I said, "Well, let's go out and let me try you out." And we put the ball down on the 40-yard line, and he kicked it through the end zone. I said, "You're hired." And so he's been with us for 4 years, and he's done a great job. He's an excellent student in our school building. He's what you look for in a student athlete. He's a great teammate to his players. I got to see him take a sophomore under his wing this year and really kind of teach him the ropes of practice and how things went. And it's really been good to have Jacob around. We really appreciate you guys doing this. Jacob, do you want to say anything?
I just want to thank y'all for representing me, and y'all are doing a great job, and I'm honored to represent this town and county. So thank y'all.
Jacob, you want to just, with newspapers here, you can tell us where you're signing, and then it'll be.
I wish I
You can
could tell y'all what I'm signing. I'm still waiting on a few more schools to pull the trigger right now, so we'll see.
I'm sure you're going to be successful. Congratulations,
Thank you.
young man.
Thank you.
Sir.
Coach, that size may help because sometimes the kicker is the lone safety in a breakaway, and so that can't hurt him at the college level.
I think we can put this material up on the wall. Is that correct?
I've got it on my.
And I have it on last night's schedule or agenda, and maybe you have last night's agenda. It is Part 9. B, C, and D, and it's in 3 parts, obviously. And Mr. Director, if you would take it away with Part B.
9B is the land for I-840 corridor 3-school complex. The Rutherford County School Board had a special call board meeting on December 10th, 2016 for the purpose of visiting sites for a 3-school complex in the I-840 Amelville Road area. Schools included an elementary school, middle school, and high school. A site of 110 acres off of Ocala Road was chosen. The property is relatively flat, meaning lower grading cost, and appears to have proper supportive soil for structural purposes and on-site sewer treatment. It is oriented so as to have 2 ingress-egress points, one at either side of the property. The property owner has made a written offer to sell this tract of property at $41,600 per acre. The school board countered at $35,000 per acre, and the owner again countered with a price of $37,500 and donating the school board another 5 acres. The total cost of the 110 acres is $4,165,000. If this cost is divided by 115 acres, that brings the cost to $35,869.57 per acre. The agreement to purchase this tract should be contingent upon a suitable outcome from geotechnical testing, environmental testing, and soils testing for a sewer system that will support 4,000 students and staff. Recommend approval of the motion to approve purchase of 110 acres of property for a 3-school complex in the I-840 Amelville Road corridor on Ocala Road at a cost of $37,500 per acre. The property owner will donate another 5 acres, bringing the total tract to 115 acres. This drops the cost per acre down to $35,869.57. This purchase is contingent upon a suitable outcome from geotechnical testing, environmental testing, and soils testing for a sewer system that will support 4,000 students and staff. The Rutherford County Commission approval of the funding from the building program.
For the recommendation, is there any discussion before we get a motion?
Is there some conversation that we can have about the pulse of the commission right now? I believe that, I understand that there would be some opposition to us bringing this to them at this point, but that maybe here in a couple of weeks, through education and in conversation, that it might be seen to be more favorable. Would you agree, Mr. Odom?
But we have some additional information today after last night. You have a map also that we've put with you that one of the other sites that was kind of suggested we might take a look at is really too close to the Blackman Schools complex. It's 1.5 miles away. The site with this recommendation is actually 4.5 miles away. So it is really better situated for 3 schools, and part of the other problem with some of the others was in the city, and we're looking for elementary also for that. Mr. Clardy, actually Mr. Morgan came up with some numbers today. Do you want to share some of those numbers about students in the area around the Ocala Road area?
Yes, the county mayor had asked in a meeting that we had the other day if I had any support for the numbers and students, the lots that were existing or approved, and the distance to the county line, and some different things. So I prepared that for him this morning. I haven't sent it to him yet, but in the vicinity of the site with the 3-mile radius around it, and it's almost 3 miles over to the county line from the piece of property. There's, this is counting the Linwood subdivision now, so if you want to include that, that's fine. If not, you can take 1,500 lots. That's the one that's across from Burnt Knob that's going out there that they're trying to get the sewer to, which they don't have approval on that, so that could be some time. But those total lots right now around in a 3-mile radius are 2,689. And then the existing parcels out there are 2,568, and they can range anywhere from half an acre to 100 acres. And the current number of students that we have in school right now within that radius are 1,186 students, K through 12, from that area, or 46% of the existing parcels. There's a total number of lots in existing parcels that are 5,257. So if you take 46% of that, they give you 2,428 students that would be in that area according to the lots that are there now. If you add a 3% growth factor that for another year, that brings it up to 3,156 students, K through 12 in that area. If you move out to a 4-mile radius, there are approved lots in the area of 3,618, with existing parcels equaling 6,286. And then that 6,286, in the 4-mile radius, there's 2,657 students, or 42% of the existing parcels. If you add the approved subdivision and lots, you come up with a total 9,904 parcels. If you take the 42% of that, it gives you a student population of 4,186. And if you add a 3% total growth to that, that will be 5,442 students within that 4-mile radius of the center of the site. Also, he asked me to differentiate the good, the positives, and the negatives. The positive, there's a 10-inch water line very close to the site, at the subdivision right beside it. There's a gas line on site. There's egress on either side. Electricity is there. There's enough soils for 400 or 4,000 student plus staff step sewer system. And then the lot or the site of the 115 acres is also level, meaning that the low grading costs are there. Now, the negatives, as far as I can see, is that, as you recall, on the subdivision that we have, or the subdivision next to Stewart's Creek, on either side, the residents showed quite a bit of opposition to us using those as egress, ingress. So we set those up as emergency egress. So that would give us one way out with an emergency egress in case we had some kind of emergency situation on site, that we could open the gate and use that also as egress. The only other thing is, I don't see this as really a negative, but he talked about the distance from the line, 3 miles. That's a pretty good distance, really, I think. We have schools in other areas or within that amount of distance from the line. So that's the positives I see, and that's the only negative I see with that site. And we've also been looking out there for a year, and that's the only thing that I have been able to find that has enough soil on it to support a step system for sewer, since there's no city sewer there. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
I'll ask Mr. Carter one. As far as timetable on closing on something like this, what's your timetable?
I talked to the developer today, and he said he really needed to have a commitment and closing around the end of March.
So how long is it going to take you to do the testing?
We can get it done by then, I'll say that. A lot of it depends on how the weather is, if we get in really bad rainy, cold weather, or where the ground frozen, those types of things. We have to write the contract, so I'd say within 45 to 90 days.
How long is it going to take to get it up to commission?
I don't know. Mr. Odom may have a better, or Jeff may.
I don't, we have in our motion that's contingent on buying upon it passing, and
Right.
it's likely to. So I'm not, as quick as we can get the soil testing, it has to go through Health and Ed, Budget and Finance, which is usually the next night or so, and then the commission, which is within a couple of weeks of that.
Yeah, we could, and y'all would, the pros and cons of taking the request forward before and have it contingent
Upon that?
on
Okay.
the testing would be a possibility, in which case we could go, if y'all act tonight, we could go to the January Health and Ed meeting.
And that's the 23rd?
That's what I was.
Also, property management requires an appraisal, so we'd have to get an appraisal done of the property.
Yes, sir. January 23rd.
23rd, we could start the process, Mr. Hodge. That's ever how fast they would act.
I know as a board, we went out and looked at this property, and we unanimously, everyone here agreed that this is a good site for us. And with it getting harder and harder to find land, I think we better act if we want to secure this property. I think it's up to us to send a good, strong message to this owner and let him know that we are serious about it, or we could lose out here. That's my urgency in go ahead and getting this thing going.
I know you provided us maps, and I apologize for not knowing this, but what is the amount of frontage that we have on Ocala? Do you happen to know?
I think it's about 150 feet, enough for exit there, but there's a possibility there, well, there will be some other, that road will be extended past that at some point. There's another 365 acres in there that would possibly support another 700 houses that would also need egress. And so I would think that there'll be opportunity to get out in those areas also.
Okay.
And those 700 houses weren't included in this number.
A couple of questions for Mr. Hardy as well, if I may. And I know I should know the answer to this, but you kept referencing distance from the line. Can I assume you're talking about the county line?
County line, yes, ma'am.
I thought that you were. And the numbers you were talking about earlier from the studies as far as the growth in the new subdivisions or building areas, is that showing or reflecting, do I understand, even more of an increase from what we'd anticipated, say, 3 or 4 months ago when we talked about this particular block of schools?
Well, Mr. Odom may answer that, but we were trying to pick a location that had enough area around it so that maybe we could get some of the people that were kind of over closer to Sheldon's property and those, and this would be, the 4-mile radius would be getting fairly close to that, the Sheldon property. So I don't know how much that would increase, but we know that each time we've looked at it, the numbers have been pretty steady.
And they certainly haven't gone down
No,
from original conversations.
Board? If there's nothing else, I need a motion on Part B.
So moved.
Mr. Young, thank you. A second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Moore. Further comment from anyone? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Director, Part C.
Okay, C is then the testing for this property. The geotechnical environmental testing for I-840 Amelville Road property. Mr. Sam Vance with Collier Engineering has submitted a proposal for geotechnical and environmental testing for the property, a 3-school site at I-840 Amelville Road corridor. The proposed services include site reconnaissance with contingency for clearing to provide necessary access for drilling, clearing and engineer oversight, single mobilization, and 1 day of rig hire. Air track exploration and building footprint will be utilized to gain general understanding of rock quality and to seek for potential karst features, advanced weathering, or other anomalies required above normal effort to remediate. Soil drilling and rock coring exploration executed in light of final grading plan will utilize conventional drill rigs and obtain soil sampling and rock cores to understand soil character and thickness and to refine the projected rock information in the depths of cuts and perceived implications with aspects of grading using shot rock materials and related logistics. Laboratory testing, program of testing to assess soil classification, strength, support, and engineering parameters. Preliminary geotechnical report to address findings and impacts on mass grading, comments regarding earthwork and site development and construction of foundations, slabs, and pavements, and geologic hazards. Environmental service will include a Phase 1 site assessment, which is an outsourced service, and the total cost of the service is $29,200, and again, this is a professional service. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve Collier Engineering's proposal for geotechnical and environmental testing for a cost of $29,200 as presented. This will be funding through the building program.
Move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. A second?
Second.
I believe that was Mr. Hodge. Yes, Mr. Sandvig?
If we could, if you'd give the latitude, the building program or general purpose schools for this testing, for the funding source. We don't have an approved budget in the building program for the testing, so it might be good to say general purpose school budget.
I'll offer to amend the motion as Mr. Sandvig stated.
A second to the amendment. We're going in reverse order here, but we'll make it. Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
There's a second. That's any comment on the amendment?
Typically, we borrow from this, and then when they borrow the monies, of course, for people that's listening to us, they reimburse. To get it done, very often you have to use from your own ending fund balance.
If there's no comment, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, on the, Ms. Michaels, do I have I'm okay on everything here, Honor. Okay, are there any comment on C? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 I'm sorry? We okay? Opposed? There is none. Okay. Part D.
Part D is soil testing for wastewater system at the I-840 Amityville Road site. Engineering and Construction has received a proposal from Mr. Jamie Reed at Site Engineering Consultants, SEC, for evaluation of existing soils on the I-840 Amityville Road corridor property for a proposed 4,000 students and staff step wastewater treatment system. A soils evaluation from a certified soil scientist will be performed in addition to calculating the amount of soils available for a wastewater system. The cost of the evaluation and certification is $3,000. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve the proposal from SEC in the amount of $3,000 to evaluate the soils at the I-840 Amityville Road corridor property as presented.
Motion.
So moved.
I believe that was Mr. Estes. A second?
Second.
Ms. Moore, thank you. Any comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There is none. Okay, we get to do good things here. Tenure.
10 is the tenure recommendations for teachers for 2016-17. The following teachers meet the criteria for tenure in accordance with the new tenure law. 1, they have to hold a valid Tennessee teaching license, have served Rutherford County Schools for 5 years or 45 months within a 7-year period, the last 2 in regular, not an interim position, has demonstrated an overall performance of above expectations or significantly above expectations on the team evaluation during the last 2 consecutive years of the 5-year period, or if held tenure under the previous guidelines and returned to Rutherford County Schools, meets the 2-year probationary period and tenure is reactivated. I'll be glad to read the 140-something names, or if you want to go with the list, we're okay.
The chair is going to rule on this. I'm sure these are all wonderful people, and they're all going to get a letter. Is there any board member that wants these names read? This is a democracy here, not a dictatorship. We've all read them. We all have a copy of them. Okay, I believe we're in good shape. I don't see anybody pounding the table. So
Well, the motion is to approve the recommendation of the Director of Schools to award tenure to the teachers who meet criteria for the 2016-17.
Need a motion to approve that, please?
Move to approve.
I believe that was Mr. Estes. A second?
Second.
Mr. Young, any comment on these teachers that undoubtedly have earned this? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? There is none. Report card. You have some materials there in front of you, I believe.
Yes, sir, if I might go to the
Yes, sir.
podium again and talk about
In your blue folder there, I believe, you've got Rutherford County School State Report Card 2016, and the director has some slides for us and some information. Mr. Odom.
Well, thank you. We've been petitioned for the last several years to, after the state's report card comes out, to try to do a presentation to the board based upon that. Typically, that's been November, but it was not released till mid-December this year. It is now posted on the state's website. There's certainly some differences this year. One is we certainly did not do testing below high school, so any of the testing that we'd normally see K through 8, we will not have this year. But I will share with you some of our strengths, and it's been my tradition also. I'll let you see some of the things that we can do as needs, because they usually come back as a budget request or some focus that you might have. So we'll take a look at these, and please stop me and ask any questions as we go through. The first thing is cut score changes, and I'm kind of doing the same thing I guess the commissioner did. This is not Rutherford County's. You'll see those in a moment. But these are statewide proficiencies, as it says here. The big change for the public in looking at this year is that you see statewide, the mastered and on track together is only about 1/4 of our students, 46.8. They changed the cut scores, some more difficulty in the assessment. So what you're beginning to see is that change. So this becomes the benchmark, again, cut score for the going from this point forward. So that's just information for you. You have a copy. There's English 2, English 3, Algebra 1. Really interesting. Across the state of Tennessee, only 20% of 20.1% of the students would be considered proficient or mastered or on track. So a couple of things there again, more correct answers to get the same cut score, but that's not ours. You'll see those in a minute. But this is a document. Most of what I've placed in here are documents from the State Department of Education or that sort of thing, unless in some cases I've built additional tables. For the people that's listening to us on television, or those of you that would like to navigate the state report card, just a really quick piece of information here. When you go to the Tennessee Department of Education website, and you make a choice here for students and families is one of your options on that very first page, you will get a list. There's actually about 12 of these boxes. One line certainly contains the thing that says report card. So at that particular point, you will select report card. Again, from the main web page for students and families, then select report card. You will then get drop-down menus for any public school or any public school district in the state of Tennessee. What typically comes up would be the state of Tennessee, the whole state, and then district name, which I've already done here. The drop-down box, we would select Rutherford County. And we'll be looking tonight at all schools, but again, you can look at any individual school. So some of the things now that we'd like to look at, and this is pasted in from the profile for the 15-16 school year. So we've looked at this in past years, but there's some very notable things that I think you'll be proud of in this one. For 2016-17, for 2016-17, last year, the state recorded us at 43,099. That's really a number higher than we turned in. Not exactly sure how they came up with that number. We are seeing right now 43,788. And I gave that to you last night. That was the count from yesterday, making Rutherford County Schools still the 5th largest school district in Tennessee. The other thing here is an interesting number. Last year, 2,565 English learners, and that title has changed from English language learners to English learners under the new ESSA. We've talked about before. It comprised with that is 90 languages in Rutherford County schools, and the red number is the number that I received from Ms. Hall today. From last year's 2,565, we now have 2,976. The state also designates transition students. They're typically students who have been in our schools. They are one of your EL students who have 1 year under their belt or 2 years under their belt. So if you add in the students who have who are brand new at the EL but have a T1 or T2 transitioning, the total number for us today comes in at 3,373. So we're one of the largest really in the state. We may be 3rd, 4th. We kind of bounce with Knox County. The largest is typically Metro Nashville, the 2nd largest being the Memphis area, and then it's been Knox County and then Rutherford County. But, you know, the numbers this year may change us over Knox. I do not know that, because we won't know that till next year's report card. But the next item is something that I think that you find very interesting for you as board members, because you have a really big part in that. The state average last year spent for across the state of Tennessee per pupil expenditure was $9,499.10 per pupil. In Rutherford County, you ran this school system for $8,495. You ran the school system at $1,004.10 less than the state average. And you still came out with a good school system. We're very efficient. That speaks to you and the people in our staff, the way we handle our funds, the way we do our energy conservation and other things. Another thing that I might mention here is constituents ask you in that, if we were simply to spend the state average, and that had to all be local monies, with our 43,000 students at $1,004, it would take $43 million more dollars to run Rutherford County schools, just to spend the state average. And we receive 600 and something thousand per penny on the tax rate, so you can do the math, and it would be an enormous thing. So again, I think we have a pride that we run a very good school system at a lower cost, certainly than the state average for many of those. Other little pieces of information, again, the per pupil expenditure, I always get asked how much local. We're a little bit above the state average, about a little percent. This is, again, looking at the state of Tennessee here and that. And this number, one of the reasons I think that we had almost 1,100 a year or so ago, but if you remember, they gave us an extra $3 million because of trying to get technology for the testing. So that number would be included in this. We actually gave them some of them pennies back this year, so this number at the close of this year may go back up again or something, but certainly that local percentage will change a little bit again, because that was kind of a one-year time they gave us to purchase the computers, if you remember. Federal spending for us, a little over 7%. Statewide, it's about 11%. Again, state funding, we rely heavily on state funding, 51.31%. Statewide, that's more like 47. So we are able to tap state resources above the state average for funding. Any questions, comments on this page? This is one I know that you get asked about a lot in dealing with this.
I know we do a lot of grant applications, and some of those are federal grants. Do those get counted in this federal funding, or are grants out separate from this?
I think if the grant comes through the state, some federal grants, CTE and all, would come to the state, and then the state redistributes that based upon the grant. I think, personally, Mr. Sam, you can correct me, I think that would probably show in the number and would show in this percentage here, here with the 7%. Any private grants or things that's local, I don't know that would be included, and do not think it would be. But we tap that too. That's another reason why we're spending $1,000 less, is some local grants and other grants we write.
Are federal dollars, I'm not quibbling over this, we're doing a great job, but if we can get more federal dollars in here, I want to, but are federal dollars largely driven by economic
poverty,
disadvantage?
economically disadvantaged, yes. Sometimes you get around Montgomery County and some of the other places, there are some funds, it's where military facilities and things like that. If you go back several decades here, we received some for Seward at the time when that base was here and all. But of course, we don't qualify for any of that now, and that's changed considerably. Okay. Comparing district profiles, a piece of data really means almost nothing unless you have something to compare it to. So this is a spreadsheet that I prepared. I just went through and picked basically mostly school districts larger than us, similar to us, that sort of thing, as comparison. So you can see kind of at the bottom the summary for the state of Tennessee and how Rutherford County goes. Again, there's that $4,004.10. There is some districts that spend less. Wilson County actually spends a little less than we do over there with the funding, but most spend more. One of the larger ones being around Oak Ridge and over in Franklin Special School District, as you can see those numbers. Again, local expenditures and percentage, I've already mentioned that. Federal, we're doing it with 4.7% less than the state average federal. We are state monies, we're about almost 4% higher in receiving monies from the state than the average school district. We do our homework really well. Our staff here does a very good job of submitting their reports on time, aggressively, taking opportunities for monies that come from the state and making application. You know, that doesn't just happen all the ways. It's because of the staff that you have that's doing this. Other interesting kind of piece of information, free reduced. We have our free reduced at 35.1 is what they're showing. And let me tell you what they have done this year. They went to direct certification. And so every school district dropped considerably. And they did that because the federal government is part of the ESSA change and all. And under the No Child Left Behind, the last part of that, we're going to direct certification. Direct certification is when the state identifies what agency is it does that? Mr. Salmon, do you remember? That sends food service and us the names of the kids that qualify. Those that are receiving state monies individually for doing that. So that's the percentage. But our true percentage is still in the 40s if you add up the free and reduced, but that's not the figure they're going to use anymore. How many teachers per administrator? This is really interesting, of course. We have 23.1 teachers per administrators. The state average has 12.3. You added assistant principals this year, which will show up next year, but at your budget time, because we were so far much below the state, and it reflects that in this particular document here, that we're 10.9 teachers per administrator less than the state average. So we sometimes receive something, why you have so many administrators? Well, we're really quite low compared to the others. And you can see the other districts there. And I take this off the state report card. I'm assuming the state report card's correct. So that's where I've gotten this. And then our enrollment and the other information. But anyway, you can take a look at that. Special education numbers, English language percentages, that sort of thing. We have some districts that are certainly a higher percentage of EL than we have, but our numbers are very large. For instance, Bedford County, if you kind of take a look at their numbers, you go back and research them, they have a pretty high percentage of EL students also. Much of that is the horse industry and Tyson's Food, that sort of thing is some of their workers. But that's for you to study. One of the things or a couple of things that's really, I think, notable for us this year is the graduation rate. When you take a look at our graduation rate at the 95.2%. But I want to point something out. I put the star on it. This is pasted in from the report card. But look at, this is some ethnicity and male, female, and that sort of thing. We do not have a large discrepancy in graduation rate based on students' ethnicity in Rutherford County. That's not true in a lot of places. So our high schools and all are working very well with different groups of students to maintain that graduation rate. So that's a real compliment. And then another factor that you've seen before, we know if we hook them in career and technical education, we've already been told that graduation rate for us was 99.02%, and our OTC gets a 100% graduation rate. But compared to our 95.2, the state average is actually 88.5. So we're somewhat, quite considerably above the state average for graduation. Okay. The other thing that was a good report for us this year was the ACT scores for Rutherford County Schools is 20.8. State average is 19.9, and that's the composite score. Of course, there are others such as math, English, science, reasoning, reading I'm not presenting those to you tonight, but anyway, if you'd like to look at those, you can certainly drill down for any district or any school and look at that. But very proud of our 20.8. You know, the state's goal is going to be 21. We're almost there for that, and that was for 2025. I found another thing, and John Ash and some of us have been talking about that. Central Magnet has a 29.1% ACT score. That's a really good ACT score. I've done some research. I haven't looked at every high school in the state, but I've done some research with the ones that always score high. I have not seen another high school in the state of Tennessee that has a score higher than 29.1. There's one close. Merrill Hyde over in Sumner County is a magnet school, and they're very high. But even Hume Fogg or MLK in Nashville or even Brentwood, it looks like Central Magnet, we'll see, very well may have the highest ACT score this year. I hope so. That'll be good. The multi-year growth for ACT, taking a look at it, that's a graph that I've been keeping for a number of years. After 2010 was when they started requiring every student to be tested. And so that was when it changed. ACT scores dropped because Tennessee was one of there's something like 12 or 15 states now that require all students, but certainly most states do not require all students for ACT. The other good piece, in looking at it here, this is from the TVAS site, and the public TVAS, I think, opened today. So parents can go to TVAS themselves and look at the public site. But we received a rating for 2016 for our growth or our improvement, which basically says that what we did or the strategies that we did is above expectations or projections for those students. So that's a strong accolade for us, and our 3-year is also above. But anyway, that's tying actual scores to growth of those student scores. Another thing that's really interesting, I want to kind of explain this to you because you can also, there's an effect score or value-added score, and I think what really shows up here, we are ones, except for numeracy is a 3 and a 1, but so is Wilson County and Williamson County. Now, what you have here is simply the fact that the high school students, when they were told the test wouldn't count, and we had that debacle going on, yes, we test, no, we don't test. That's why I don't have as high confidence in the percentages this year. Williamson County is not a 1. Rutherford County is not a 1 either. But I think it reflected the state decided to go ahead and use them and do this anyway, so that's what you have. But what's really interesting to me, if you take a look at Montgomery County, who got straight 5s in their growth, and you look at us with 1s, if you look across there, we're higher than they are in actual achievement in all of those categories. So if you as a parent or a board member or someone chooses to look at this, you've got two things going on. You got that effect going on, and you got the actual performance percentages, proficiencies. So when you take a look at that, and when they add this up, it's English 1, 2, and 3. It's Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. So the state combines those and looks at those percentages. But in the bottom, you'll see the ACT composite, we're 9/10 above the state average. For all 4 benchmarks, in other words, students that are proficient or met the benchmark on ACT, we're above the state average. Over 7% above in English, over 5% above in math, over 4% above in reading, and over 5% above in science. So again, when you actually look at how we're doing, we are, even though I don't think the students tried very hard, we still came out higher in those. So the report card for teacher administrator summary again, and about the HQ taught, and that's probably going to go away because this is not doing the HQ anymore. They've kind of changed that around. But 99.5, what typically happens here is career and technical education, because some of those are, the industry certification does not necessarily require a college degree. So some of the things that you see in that, you may want to take a look at. I know Mr. Evans was discussing with me today that when you look at Rutherford County teachers and you look at the doctorate, the EDS, the 45, and the MS, look at what a percentage of our teachers have above a bachelor's degree. So we have more than half of ours that actually have gone on to receive additional degrees in Rutherford County. That's not true everywhere either in that case, but I just thought you'd find that information interesting. Number 10, so Tennessee's ESSA accountability model. I'm going to take just a little bit of time to show you where the report card's going. We had no 3 through 8 scores, but I'm going to show you where it's going. So the goal of the state of Tennessee is that Tennessee will rank in the top half of states on NAEP, National, by 2019. 75% of third graders will be proficient in reading by 2025. The average ACT will be 21 by 2020. And we were 20.8 this year. And the majority of high schools graduates from the class of 2020 will earn a post-secondary certificate, diploma, or degree. Now, this is going to play out. What I'm showing you here will play out on what future report cards will look like, because you remember our legislators voted to give schools A through F score, grade. So I'll show you what we kind of face in that in just the next couple of slides or so. So when you take that previous slide and you look at all students, the baseline for 15-16 for high school math, 20.8%. The state is saying by 2024-25 that 65% will be either on track or mastered for math. So each school will face wherever they are now. They're going to face, you kind of divide that by the number of years, you're going to have to go that much every year to get to the state's goal of 65.4. And so I think high school graduation rate, again, we were over 95, so the state's goal is 95 by 24-25, which we're already above that. But the growth, they want the economically disadvantaged to be 93.7. They also want our special ed students by 2025 to have an 87.7% graduation rate. That's probably doable. It's 71% now. But anyway, that's the goals. Now, how does that kind of play out? This is actually, we received this within the last few weeks. This is Rutherford County Schools' annual measurable objective goals. For short, you hear us say AMOs, and that's what it is. So to get a particular letter grade, this is what we as a district have to do this year. I want to point out to you, every high school gets one of these individualized to their school. I made a statement to you a few weeks ago that the complexity of the new report cards involved. So we have 10 high schools, there's 10 of those. The only reason you don't have them for elementary is because they didn't test last year. After this year, every elementary school will have it. So what are they saying? They're saying for us, if you take a look at this, and this is high school English. I'm trying to do it real quickly. What percent did we have? 25.3. That were below. We got to reduce that to 19. Double below is 33.6. Double below will earn you an A on the grading scale. We're not really clear whether that double below is all categories or one category or what. Some of the business rules for the report card has not been finalized. But anyway, we've got to go up to 37.8. Was in 16, we had 37.8 of our students in English 9 through 12 were what we used to say is proficient, but mastered or on track. Our goal for next year is to go up about 4% to 41.9, about 3 to 4%. And some schools will have 6% change because they got further to go. Some schools may have a 2% change. I'm just showing you Rutherford counties as a whole. And look at this is all of your subgroups. So this is what all we're tracking and what the state's tracking through their testing. The other thing, ESSA didn't require this, but Tennessee has adopted it. They call it a super subgroup. You must have 30 students to be able to use a subgroup. You'd have to have 30 economically disadvantaged, or 30 Black or African American, or 30 Asian. You can actually see how many we had last year in each of these categories right here. The only thing we didn't have 34 in the high school was American Indians and Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islander. We didn't quite reach the 30 in English for that. But we had every other subgroup. But if a school doesn't have the 30 threshold, if you can add together their economically disadvantaged for introduced lunch, their students with disabilities, and their English language learners, and then the combined of the Black, Hispanic, and Native American, and if that hits 30, then they have a goal for the super subgroup. Again, that's a Tennessee choice. That was not an ESSA requirement in that. So most all of our schools are going to have a subgroup, super subgroup, including us. Any questions about this? This is the kind of things. I met yesterday with our middle school principals. We meet next week with high school. We'll meet with elementary. We're just really having a family time to sit and talk about. I want to make sure you as administrators and your teachers, you'll be able to begin to understand this because of its complexity and how much involvement it is. They've got to begin to try to get a grip of it and get a handle of the complexity and the breadth and depth of this. So we're working very hard to help people understand. So how will the grades be assigned? And I have a sample from you here from a high school example. For high schools, 35% of their score will come from the achievement. In other words, that's those goals of what percent are mastered or on track. And 35% will come from value added. So 70% of their grade will come from achievement and growth when you add those two together. We had this pretty much in No Child Left Behind. Most of the notations came from those two. But here's the real change. And Mr. Estes and some of you that came from high school, Mr. Jordan here, to look at it, I think they'll report the graduation rate, but I want to show you something else. We asked that the state work in career and technical education, give credit for career and technical education towards this, but look what they've done. The readiness score, which is going to make up 20% of their grade, it's only 15% less than either one of these categories. You'll take the graduation rate, whatever that percent is, now it's 95.2, and then if that student does not earn a 21, or that student doesn't get early post-secondary industry certification, then they'll not count in that. Now, my math tells me when you multiply a fraction by a fraction, the resulting product is less than either of the two fractions. So I think the report card will show the true graduation rate, but the grading is tied to this. And that's one of the reasons I got to sit and talk with the high school people. But you can see how strongly ACT of 21 is playing into this. You can kind of tell the intent and the direction that we want to go. So this is a challenge. Now, they also will have these subgroups. You'll get a letter grade, and this is a sample letter grade, and a sample letter grade for subgroups. Now, the subgroup is 30 and 30, 10 and 20, but this ELPA is your English language learners. So federal law did require the English language learners. So that has to be in whatever you do because that was come through in ESSA. And that's how you get 100% of your grade. In this sample here, the school gets basically a B. But I really want you to understand too, and our principals to understand, that when you consider all of your students, when you get to your letter grade, 60% comes from all of your students, but 40% is going to come from your subgroups to make up your 100%. So do you begin to see the complexity that I'm talking about in this? And how many things that they kind of keep their eye on? Now, there are a few other things in it, but this is basically what they're showing. And the opportunity to comment on the ESSA and that sort of thing is open to the public till January 31st, I believe. It's an online thing to look at. But this is a proposal that Tennessee plans, basically, unless they change it, to present to the U.S. Department of Education in March as our ESSA plan. Okay? I enjoy quotations. I found a couple that I thought, as I was doing this, and thought that I picked somebody rather recent, about 400 BC, made this statement. Socrates made this statement. If all who are engaged in the profession of education were willing to state the facts instead of making greater promises than they can possibly fulfill, they would not be in such bad repute with the lay public. He could have made that now, couldn't he? So evidently it hasn't changed in a few centuries that you look at it. But in the end, I come back to something Abraham Lincoln said. Why do we do this? It gets complex, it's complicated, we still strive, we push our students, we do that. And Abraham Lincoln said this: upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it. Mr. Holliday, I wish the federal government would say that today, not presuming to dictate or plan any system from the federal level. Look what he said. I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people may be engaged in. That everyone may receive at least a moderate education appears to be an objective of vital importance. That's why we do what we do. Questions? Anyone else, or any comments or anything that you'd like to say?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of questions. I'd like to go back, if we could, to the first page, the state report card. I'm looking at those cut scores, and I guess I need maybe a little more education on exactly what the cut stands for or what it means.
Cut score is how many questions do you have to get correct to be considered proficient.
Okay.
If you have 100 questions, if I said it that you only have to get 30% right to be proficient, that's one thing. That's a certain number of questions. But if I said it that you got to get 60% of them correct to be considered proficient, or in this case, mastered on track. What the state did to align with ACT, what they literally did is they took in high school, wasn't elementary, they aligned into NAEP, but they looked at the Tennessee statewide ACT scores and what percent of our students were making the ACT in math or the ACT in English, and they set the cut scores so that the same percentage on the EOC test for us would match the ACT percentage or be very close to it. So since ACT is a much more difficult test, it raised the bar of the number of questions you get correct before you can be considered proficient.
Okay. These results are still pretty dismal, though.
Well, I mean, the commissioner and them said this is going to happen, and we knew that if you do that.
Well, I guess one of the things I'm pondering, and you touched on this earlier, but I can't help but look at this, and these are the 10 ready summaries, and want to ask the question of how much of these low scores for the entire state are a pretty direct result of the testing debacle that happened with the state last year.
I think a significant percentage, you know, most school districts, most directors said, why don't we just not use them this year? If there is an advantage, you got the place that you start lower, but then, you know, if they try next year, maybe you can make your AMO the growth. Remember, the AMO is where you have to make that growth each year to get to that 2025 goal.
So was the English and the math, were those the only topics that were tested on 10 Ready for high school last year?
No,
the
they
others,
tested
like
English
course
and math.
exams?
You had all your EOCs were tested. What I'm showing you basically is what will be included in the report card grading in the future. Now, science will also be included, but we did not receive an AMO for science. And science is biology and chemistry. The combined percentages of those will be put together. They literally say for the elementary, and I think the high school too, that it'll be weighted equally as the term unless they change it, which means a third of it will come from English, a third from math, and a third from science.
So do we have Rutherford County's cut scores?
What did we, yes, it was in this, it's in this, if you'll go back and look at page 5. No, that's not the one. That's not the, let me go. If you'll look at this page, you'll see our percentages, which would be in this line right here, right through there. That's it. And you can see what the state average was and how we compared to the state average. Here's the state average on this line. It says Tennessee. And up here at Rutherford, this is the English. This is the English that we had, 65.6%, which was considerably better, really counted in the state, some 7% higher. So that's page 8, should give you that comparison.
It's 4 actually on the pack. Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah, it's slide 8, I should say, because I put 2 slides per page. It's slide 8.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions for the director? Thank you, Mr. Odom. I'll go ahead and as he returns to his seat, Part 12, TSBA recommends reviewing policies annually and review Section 2, Physical Management this month, and refer any potential revisions to Angel McLeod. We have a meeting, a policy meeting, as you are aware, on the 17th here in this room. Part B, appointment of the Bus Committee, Contract Committee, which is a 4-year contract, which is coming up for renewal. And Ms. McLeod, Mr. Reed, Mr. Snell, and myself will be meeting very shortly, and we will have some dates very quickly also where we will be having those meetings with the bus leadership, whoever that they send. Any questions on either one of those 2 items? Insurance update, Ms. Barnes, I believe you said you meet 26th, okay. Director's update, anything that we didn't cover last night?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Moore returns after a little sickness and is with us tonight and is ready to go, I assume, on the Tennessee Legislative Network. Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure, trust me, to be back. As I think everyone's aware, our 2017 session of the Tennessee Legislative body convened this week, and our folks were sworn in on Tuesday. And what I have done is I've provided all of you in your packet a list of the committee members that were appointed, I guess, yesterday for the the different education committees that would be pertinent, I think, to the things that we're going to be looking at and watching over the course of the year. I also have included, and thank you to Ms. Joyce once again for helping me pull this together kind of at the last minute, so she is always amazing. A list of some of the bills that have already been put out there. So far in looking these over, and I'm not going to take the time to belabor all these, the board can certainly look these over. I'll certainly be happy to go forward with any questions of any of our legislators if you have questions about any of these in particular. Not seeing anything sticking out yet in terms of, charter, voucher, anything like that are real hot buttons necessarily. There is one, though, that I did want to point out because we did have so much conversation about it back a few months ago when I believe I did a presentation to the board on the concerns that had come up just from the general public about the social emotional learning standards in the committee meeting for the State Department of Education that I attended. And if you look on the second page, you'll see Senate Bill 4. It's been introduced by Senator Gresham. Education, it says, as introduced, would prohibit the State Board of Education from adopting standards or competencies for social and emotional learning, prohibits the Department of Education from providing instruction or competencies in social and emotional learning to fulfill the requirements for character education. Character education. Passed on the second consideration with the Senate said it's held on desk pending committee appointments, and that was on January the 11th. So I just thought that was noteworthy, that we've got something like that being put through by Senator Gresham. So unless anyone has any questions, that would conclude my report for tonight.
Any questions from Ms. Moore? Mr. Holliday on federal, anything that we didn't cover last night?
Stand as presented.
Okay, general discussion by board members, just two quick items that I have for you. Our next general work session is the 24th and the 26th, and that agenda is already on your website, as I told you last night, and it's been up 2 or 3 days. Also, there's a draft here that Mr. Odom and Ms. Michaels worked out today from that we will be sending to Representative Terry and Senator Ketron and Senator Tracy, that Senator Tracy sort of requested about our feelings about buses, and I asked you to read that before we started the meeting tonight to see if you had anything that you would like for Ms. Michaels to change on this draft, and then she'll get it in the mail probably tomorrow, I guess, to the 3 legislators. It seemed fine to me, and a general summary of what we discussed last night, and particularly some comments that many of you made, particularly Mr. Estes and some of his stats that we talked about, and Mr. Holliday, of course, and I guess all of us, and certainly Mr. Snell. And your participation, Mr. Snell, was greatly appreciated in the information that you shared with us last night. At any rate, I hope this adequately expresses what this board wanted it to. And if there's some changes, now would be a terrific time to bring it up. Ms. Michaels, I guess we're in good shape. So nobody's saying anything. Okay, any other general discussion from any board member? I don't see anything. The Raiders tip off in 42 minutes. We are adjourned.